Why funding for public schools should come from the federal level. Oak Park and River Forest High School has a 93% graduation rate with an 86% enrollment into a 2 or 4 year college. Proviso East High School has a 69% graduation rate with a 55% enrollment into a 2 or 4 year college. Manley High School on Chicago's west side has a 78% graduation rate with only a 21% enrollment into a 2 or 4 year college. Why is there a significant difference in these numbers? According to the U.S. Department of Education, school funding comes from a variety of sources, including the federal, state, and local level. The federal government only contributes about 8% of funding to public schools, while the state contributes only about 12%, and local county property tax make up for almost 80% of school funding. 1/3 of the individual annual property tax is allocated towards school funding. So it's clear to say the more property costs, the more money goes towards education in that particular community. Is that even fair? Is it even constitutional? There are a few points that I want to touch on. The first is that I want to say that a good quality education is something all kids are entitled to and should be provided with. The government should be doing everything to make sure that this happens. A child has no control over what zip code they're born into, yet it is their zip code that determines how much their school will get in funding, which ultimately results in how good of an education they actually get. Funding that pays for new books, new computers, updated software, and ongoing training for teachers. Students in impoverished area whose parents pay property tax that is pretty low need the same quality education as kids who live in affluent neighborhoods so that they can be prepared for high school and take college prep courses. Without the proper tools and training, how can we expect kids to perform satisfactorily on standardized state aptitude tests that compare them to the rest of the state and even globally? How can they be prepared in high school to score a minimum of a 23 on the ACT exam, which is the minimum score required for college admission at a university or local college? To go to school every day and receive a subpar or mediocre education simply because of their zip code is not fair. It's not even ethical. For the sake of comparison, I've devised 3 graphs. As I previously mentioned, Oak Park and River Forest High School has a 93% graduation rate with an 86% enrollment in a 2 to 4 year college. These are the statistics for Oak Park, Proviso East High School, and Manley High School. Based on these percentages, if we take a look at the cost of property tax in Oak Park, or rather the cost of the home, the average home in Oak Park costs $374,000. The average home in Maywood costs about $149,000. And the cost of the average home in Chicago costs about $123,000. Remember, school funding is primarily based on the cost of property tax. The higher the property tax, the more money that goes towards education. In this graph, I will show you the average home in Oak Park pays about $10,000 per year in county tax, property tax. Maywood pays about $4,000 per year per home in property tax, while the city of Chicago, the average cost per property tax is $3,066. What's the correlation? The higher the home value, the higher the property tax, the higher the success rate. Based on the difference in cost of each property, that is exactly what determines what the government believes a child's education in that particular community should cost. I think by allowing schools to be funded based largely on the amount of property tax for that area creates a huge gap in the amount of money available for education. I believe the federal government should be doing more. There should be a set amount given to each school, not only for scholastic purposes, but for ongoing tutoring for struggling students, as well as special interest programs like music and art classes, those programs that have been eliminated from public schools. Because schools function on a minimum budget, there is no room for after-school programs, school plays, or even field trips. If the government funded schools completely, even the lunch menus could be improved. Perhaps schools could offer specialized lunches to support a healthier lifestyle, like vegan meals for kids who don't eat meat, or low-fat meals for children dealing with childhood obesity or kids with juvenile diabetes could be offered meals tailored to their needs. One last thing I'd like to point out is that by allowing funding to come from the local government, this creates a huge divide from a socioeconomic standpoint. One last thing I'd like to point out is that by allowing funding to come from the local government, this creates a huge divide from a socioeconomic standpoint. If students can never get ahead because of their restricted education, they will remain exactly where they are. This is something that will be passed on from generation to generation. If the only option after high school is to work, they will acquire entry-level jobs that will keep them in the same tax bracket, in the same community. They will raise their kids in this same environment. If nothing ever changes, everything stays the same. In conclusion, quality education is a key part of what makes the American dream. It is a key privilege and a right derived from freedoms that have labored by blood, sweat, and tears. This quality education should be accessible to all Americans. The American dream should be attainable by all. In order for the nation to grow, we must cultivate and shape our future with the brightest young minds. No person should have an unfair advantage over others. But as long as education is primarily funded based on property tax, a child's plight and flight to success may be grounded even before takeoff. To use property tax to determine such an important event in a child's education is simply saying value in equity equals value in education. We value your education based on the value of your home. We invest when you invest.